Hi, I'm Andy Maddock, and today's video we're going to go over lists. So we're going to start off in the Hello World project that we created in Python. Obviously we started off with this comment and list, so this is going to be ignored by the compiler. And we're going to create a list. A list is a type of variable used to keep multiple variables within inside it. It's a form of an array. So I'm going to name the variable list, say equal, and then I'm going to use standard brackets. So beginning and closed brackets, and now anything in here will be a part of this variable. So we're going to make it a list of names, put in some names. So I'm making strings in this list. Those strings are the type of variable. So I have them in quotes. So I've created 4 different strings. So they're separated by commas, and they're in quotes because they're strings. And all 4 of those strings are assigned to the variable called list. Now I'm going to print out the results, so using the built-in print function in Python of list. And if I just say print list, it's going to give me all 4 of those variables. But as you see, it's showing them in the brackets, in the quotes, with the comma. So now if I want to access a specific item within this list, I'm going to do brackets again, and I'm going to give it the index. The index is the number of the item, and it starts from 0. So in programming, everything when you count starts from 0. So this first name, John, is 0. So I'm going to type in 0, so that's the first item in the list is 0. So when I hit run here, it's going to show me John. See? And now when I do that, it shows that it's just the string John. It's no longer showing the brackets. So I'm getting the literal string John. I'm going to change this to 1, and that's going to give me Joe. So 0, 1, hit run. Now I have Joe. If I change it to 2, it's going to give me Fred. And 3 is going to give me Sam. And there you go. So that's how you access the specific items within the list, 0, 1, 2, or 3, based on the index of the list. Next, what we're going to do is what they call slicing. So slicing the list is grabbing multiple variables from the list. In order to do that, you use a colon. Now, if I just put brackets in the colon and I hit run, it's going to give me the entire list because I didn't tell it what to slice. So basically, the commands are separated by the colon. The first is where you're going to start in the list. So are you going to start at item 0, 1, 2, 3, or so on, depending on how big your list is. So let's say I want to start at Joe. So Joe is item 1, because remember index 0 is John, index 1 is Joe. So if I do this and I hit run, what it does is, since I didn't put anything here, it's going to give me to the end. So on this side of the colon, nothing there. So I did 1, nothing. That's going to give me from index 1, which is Joe, all the way to the end. So Joe, Fred, and Sam. And it keeps it in a list. So it sliced it into a new list. So now I'm going to change that. And let's say I want just Joe and Fred. So now I'm going to type in the number of the next item I want. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Instead of saying the index number, I'm actually going to say the number. So in the list here, we have 4 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we want to go in and take element number 1, the index number 1, but the second element in there, which is Joe. The reason that didn't get me this one and this one is because it's not going index to index, it's going index to number. So it's going 1, 2, 3, 4 is the element numbers. So 2 is Joe. So I'm getting from Joe to Joe. So now I got to do 1 to 3 if I want to get Joe to Fred. So let's say index 1 is Joe, but element number 3 is Fred. Not sure why they did it this way. It's a little confusing, but that's how it works. So now if I want to go from 1 to 4, so Joe, Fred, and Sam, I do 1 to 4. Joe, Fred, and Sam. So that's starting index 1 and then to element 4. See, element 2, 3, and 4. So if I wanted the whole list, I'd do 0 to 4. And if I had typed this number as something that doesn't exist in the list, like 10, in Python it doesn't fail. So it would still work. Other languages that would fail. So as long as this number is greater than whatever the end is, it's just going to go to the end. And that's the same as just doing this. Now if I want to go from 0 and then I want to go to Fred, I can also do negative. So I'm going to say -1. So instead of counting, it's going to count from the back here. So whenever you type negative, so this is going to go and type from John here, because that's John is 0, and then over to -1. So back 1 element, not index, element back to Fred. That's going to give me John, Joe, and Fred. Like that. The other thing I can do is I can sort the array or the list. So I just do the list name. So I called it list, so that's why I'm saying list here. And then sort. And then parentheses. So what that does is it puts it in order. So now when I print this list again, we're going to see now it's in order. Fred, Joe, John, and Sam is now in alphabetical order. So that's pretty useful. If I had wanted to assign it to a new list, say I want to take the original list, so I have a new list here, and I want to make this a sort, just a part of that list. Say I could take item 1, which is Joe, so index 1, 0 and 1, Joe, and I'm going to make Joe and Fred. So I'm going to take element 3, 1, 2, 3, which is Fred. So this is going to be Joe and Fred as a new list. I have my new list there, and then I'm going to sort the new list. And then I'm going to print the new list. Okay, so now I'll just have Joe and Fred because I'm taking it here. I'm going to sort it here, and then I'm going to print that out there. And now since I sorted it, it's Fred and Joe. So with lists, you can sort any type of variable that you want. It doesn't have to be strings. You could do numbers. Like, so if I want to use numbers, I could just type them in here. Like this. And we'll run that same code on that and see what it produces. So this gives me 2 and 3. So basically I said split my list. So I have the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is, and these are integers. And then I took item index number 1, which is 2, and then the third element, which is 3. So 2 and 3. And then I sort them alphabetical order, which is going to just be 2, 3. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you how you can have a list within a list. So I've created 3 different variables, list 1, list 2, and list 3. So list 1 has John, Joe, and Sam. List 2 has 3 integers, 40, 50, and 60. List 3 has 180, 145. I'm creating a new list. The name of the variable is list, and within it I'm going to have the 3 lists that I created prior, list 1, list 2, and list 3. is one main list and it has 3 sublists within it. So when I print that out, if I print list, it's going to show you one main list and 3 sublists within it. So you can see the parentheses on the outer end, or the main list, and then each set of parentheses here has the 3 sublists within them. Now, if you want to access specifically there, you can say, okay, I want in list, I want list here, and I want item number 1, and then I want to say, item number 0, and then I want number 0. So what that's going to do is going to give me list, which remember has all 3 lists here. Item 0 is this first list here, and then the second item 0 is this first list. So it's giving me this first list, and then item 0 that, so John, right? There we go, John. Now I'm going to add those together, and I want to print out something from the second list. So I'm still going to take the list that I've created here, and now I want item number 1, so index 1 here, to access list 2. And then let's say we'll take 60. So this is index, remember start at 0, so 0, 1, 2. So we'll take 2 to get 60. And now there's one little caveat here. These are integers, and I'm printing them out as strings, so I have to do what they call casting. So to cast this as a string, I just type in str. I put parentheses around it. That's the function that converts this into a string so that it can output in the print along with this string. I hit run, and I get John 60. There's no space there because there's no space here in the list. If I want a space, I can add in a string literal, that's a space. So just a plus to concatenate it, a space here in parentheses, and then my other part of the list. And we got John 60. Now if I want to grab something from this last list, I can do the same thing. I just go right here to plus, we'll add our little space there. And then we're going to cast it again because that one's an integer again, so in parentheses. And now I'm just going to do list 3. And then, we want to grab from this list here. So we'll just do list. But then we want index number 0, 1, 2. So 2 is list 3, right? And then in list 3, we want to say get item number 2, which is going to be index 1. So 0 and 1 is 145. So I got John 60, 145. So just, it can be a little confusing at first. You just have to look at it to see how everything lines up. The biggest thing here is remembering to count from 0 for your lists. So once again, I'll walk you through this. We have 3 lists here, each with 3 elements. They all start at 0, so 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. These are strings because they're in quotes. These are integers because they're whole numbers and they're not in quotes. Notice the different color in PyCharm. I take this new variable called list, and I'm putting brackets around it, so that makes this another list, and within that list I have my 3 sublists, which are these lists here. So I've created 3 sublists, and then I'm printing out this variable, but the specific index indicates what I'm grabbing from the sublists. So the first one indicates which sublist I am grabbing from. So in this one, I'm grabbing from sublist 0. And if we look at that, list 0 is this list 1. And I'm grabbing the first index, which is John. So you see John there. I'm adding just a blank space, which is this blank space here. And then I'm adding a cast here to cast it to a string because it's an integer. Grabbing this list again, but this time I'm grabbing index 1 of this list, which is here. See 0 and 1, so that's 1. It's going to give us list 2. And then I'm grabbing index 2 of this list. So 0, 1, 2, which is 60. So we look down here, it's 60. Adding the space again. See, space, oops, space is right here. And then I'm adding a string cast because it's, once again, it's an integer. I got to cast it to a string to show it. So I'm grabbing the list again, index 2. So 0, 1, 2, that's list 3. And then out of list 3, I'm getting index 1. So 0 and 1, that's 145, and that does 145. So in this video, we learned how to do lists. We learned how to slice the list using the colon to grab multiple elements of the list and create a new list. We learned how to sort the list in alphabetical order using the sort function. And then we learned how to create what they call a multi-dimensional array or a multi-dimensional list. Pretty much just a list with sublists within it, and how to access those sublists using the index from each one. So your list and then which index item you want. So this is really useful in programming, and you're going to use it a lot to create lists and sublists so you can tie together different bits of information that are related and then later access them. Thank you for watching the video.